Cloud.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right. So welcome, welcome. This is another episode of Embodied Memories, Narratives of African Diasporic Religious Communities. And I'm so super excited and honored to have our very special guest who's going to be speaking with us today. So I will let him share, his name. So can you please share with us your full name and what you prefer to be called?
My name is Patrick Bellegarde-Smith with a hyphen, and I was born in the US, but as a baby, I went to Haiti, which is why I have a funny accent, and nobody allows me to forget about this. So if I say I was born in the US, nobody will believe it because of that accent.
Okay, well, awesome. And so what, Doctor, I know that you're a doctor. I know that you're also Houngan Dr. Bellegarde-Smith. What do you prefer to be called? What do you prefer that I call you during this interview?
Patrick.
Patrick, okay. And Patrick, what pronouns do you use?
Oh, that always confuses me because I am old enough not to know that there were choices in life. I guess he and his.
He and his, okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest way to say it.
Yeah. So is there something that you'd like to ask me before we get started?
No, I'm glad that people have developed this very strong interest in African-derived religions and African religions as well, because it was high time in coming, and I'm glad that the interest is being shown now and people are studying it academically, because that spiritual exercise is terribly important to us as people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And I'm really looking forward to your wealth of knowledge that you're going to share with us. So you mentioned that you were born in the United States, but that you grew up in Haiti. So where did you, or rather that you spent some time in Haiti? Did you grow up there as well? Would you say most of your childhood?
Oh yeah. I was in Haiti until I left the country back in the mid 1960s. And so my education, my life, and my family's life was entirely in Haiti as a Haitian.
Okay, right. And what faith community did you grow up in?
Well, it's interesting because my family was not religious at all. As far as they were concerned, Christianity, and more specifically the Roman Catholic Church, was a political tool, an ideological tool in terms of the Haitian context. However, most of my family did not go to church. I was sent to parochial school because it was one of the very best schools in the country, but otherwise there was not much in terms of religious upbringing within the family system itself. Some individuals in my family, older people, did go to church occasionally, but for the most part, my parents, in terms of the nuclear family, never went to church and never raised the issue of religion at all. So religion was never discussed in the family circle.
Okay, interesting. So, but you said that you attended a parochial school. Can you talk to us a little bit about what was that experience like, coming from this non-religious home to then attending this very religious school?
Well, I got a very, very good education there, and I do not know what the present ground looks like back home in terms of the educational process, but it allowed me, for instance, when I left the country, I was in the equivalent of the 10th grade, the US 10th grade, and I went directly to university, and this without knowing English. And so I was very well prepared by those Roman Catholic priests and the lay teachers that I encountered there. There were difficulties, however, in terms of those Catholic priests who were mostly French, saw Haitian history and Haitian culture, and one had to battle against it. We were, for instance, forbidden to speak Creole in the schoolyard. We were forbidden to do these things and that kind of thing. And they were very disparaging in terms of Haitian history. I remember, for instance, being told in the classroom that it was a mistake for Haiti to have become independent because we could have remained French and be much more developed than we were at that time. Those priests believed these kinds of things. And a lot of the discussions were really blatantly racist, and that I don't know that they would ever acknowledge that. But the statements that we heard as small children in that school by the teachers, by the priests specifically, were quite racist.
Wow. Oh, wow, Patrick, it's hard to hear that. You know, I know I've read it. I know about the linguistic discrimination that's happened throughout the Caribbean and also in the United States with Black languages. I know about, I've read about the religious discrimination, the racism. I know about the racism. But to hear you say it, and that this is something that you experience, it's so jarring. And so I just want to, just to acknowledge that, like of what people in your generation went through.
Yeah, as a further illustration, for instance, I remember a priest telling my mother that for Negroes, you need to have corporal punishment, that he would not apply it against white children in France, where he was from. And he was what we call the préfet de discipline, which means that he was in charge of corporal punishment. And so we got that. But it was only applied to Black people. And he made a point to say that to my mom.
Okay. So I have a question about religion. I'm curious. I'm sure that, to a large extent, Catholicism was infused throughout the curriculum, and maybe you had courses on it. But I'm curious, did you ever have a course on world religions, right? Like where you learned about different world religions, and if so, like what was that like?
No, we did not have a course in world religion. And during my entire career in school in Haiti, that never came up, actually. We had many courses on religion, but it was Roman Catholicism. And we were not encouraged, actually, for a time we were forbidden, for instance, to read the Bible, but we had to memorize the catechism, memorize it word for word. And this was the case with many of our courses where things were memorized rather than understood. But the priests that instructed us in the Roman Catholic religion were clearly anti-Semitic and said so. And no one flinched, which was kind of interesting. And we often forget that anti-Semitism was the creation of the church in the first place. And ever since, even when I was a child, I kept thinking, but the God that they worship was a Jewish man, with emphasis on Jewish and emphasis on man. But somehow it didn't matter to them. They were still anti-Semitic. But I never verbalized this to the priest. I just kept it to myself. I did not want to be punished.
Right. Understandably so. Okay. So take us to you went through this education, and then you came back to the United States, and you were, you said the equivalent of 10th grade level, but you were so brilliant and so smart that you went straight to university.
I wouldn't say that I was brilliant or smart. I would just say that I got a superb education in Haiti, which allowed me to skip 2 grades, as simple as that. That's not my smarts. It's the fact that I was well trained by Haiti and in Haiti, and I am forever in the debt of that country, forever.
Okay. So when you now came to the United States, what was your experience like in schools in general? Is there anything that particularly stands out to you? What was that like as a Haitian, young man? And this was now in the 60s? You
It
said?
was in the mid 60s when I left the country. The political situation was getting worse back home. And so we decided to leave, as many Haitians did. And we went to the US Virgin Islands. And it was an eye opener, to be very specific about it. I met for the very first time people from the Eastern Caribbean. And I learned very quickly not to talk about the lesser Antilles. Nobody wants to be lesser. And I learned that the proper term over there was the Eastern Caribbean. And I met people from Martinique and Guadeloupe and Grenada and Barbados and Guyana, and St. Kitts and Nevis and other places, and Dominica and Antigua. And I realized that we're brothers and sisters. I had no idea that these people existed, because in Haiti, we were taught that Haiti is Latin American. And we paid attention to the greater Caribbean, to the greater Antilles, not to the lesser Antilles. And so I learned that there was a world east of us. And I was grateful for that. And I fell in love with people from the Eastern Caribbean and all those countries east of us.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And at that point, I became a citizen of the Caribbean, not just a Haitian. And I've always said that my country is from Cuba to Trinidad. That's my
okay.
country.
Awesome. Awesome. So, so I want to ask you, I'm kind of going off the cuff a little bit because you had such a, extraordinary experience. Talk to me about like what you, talk to us about like what you studied in school. You went to university. What did you study in school? And what kind of, what inspired you to choose your course of study that you did?
Well, I suppose that I had a particular knack for history and geography, and I had a strong interest in politics, especially international politics, because I came from a Haitian family that belonged to the diplomatic world. My grandfather was the Haitian ambassador in many, many different places over his very long career. So it was a given almost that I would be interested in diplomacy, in international politics. And it was a foregone conclusion that I would teach. It never occurred to me ever since I was a child, not even 10 years old, that I would end up teaching at the university level. I never considered, it never came to me that I could be doing something else.
Okay. Okay. So you started teaching at the university level, and what did you teach?
Well, after I graduated, I never ended going to college because I went through various alma maters, as it were, various universities until I got my PhD. And I remember classmates of mine when we're studying for a bachelor's, thinking when was it that I was going to leave college or leave university? It never occurred to me that I would ever leave the university. And so I spent my entire life, adult life certainly, as a student and as a faculty member in various places.
Yeah. And so at what, can you just talk to us, because I know, but for those of us who don't know your story, like what kinds of topics, right, and disciplines did you teach in?
Well, a variety of disciplines. My PhD was in international politics, international relations. And it turns out that at most universities in the United States, international studies is a subset of political science. And it was very difficult to find a job as a result of that, because people don't quite know where to place you. It is usually, as I said, a subset of political science. My first degree was in political science. The second degree was in Latin American studies. And the third degree was international politics. But I was lucky enough to find a job at a university that was one of 4 universities that had a department in international studies. Only 4 universities among the 3,000 or so existing in the US had this. So they created a job for me because they needed a Black person as faculty.
Okay. So did you have a particular specialty within international politics that you focused
Yeah,
on? What was your area?
Latin American studies, and I had 4 fields of studies at the PhD level, and that was Latin American history, Latin American diplomatic history, comparative politics, and international studies theory. And the courses that I was scheduled to teach were about Latin America and the Caribbean, with an emphasis on development, economic development. But my interest, of course, extended into sociology and anthropology and history especially. And so I was far-ranging in my interest. And so this is what I ended up teaching.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so now I want to zero in because you've been a part of different places, you know, you've different communities that you've kind of shared with us. So now I want to ask you, at present, what are the various communities or groups that you'd say that you are a part of?
Oh, for
However you
heaven's
define it.
sake. Well, it's interesting because a lot of folks I know whose antecedents are in Haiti define themselves as Haitian American. And I've never felt that. First of all, I was reminded by Americans, sometimes on a daily basis, that I had an accent. Therefore, I could not be an American. And so I've always defined myself as Haitian. And this is where I am, and I'm very much stuck in that. And but what I have done, because I do hold a U.S. passport, I have always established a difference between citizenship versus nationality.
Okay.
And you can be citizen of a country without being part of that nationality. And I think this sort of reminded me a little bit of what, for instance, existed in the old Soviet Union when it existed. You had Soviet citizenship, but you could be nationality Latvian, Ukrainian, Lithuanian, whatever it was, Georgian, etc. But the citizenship was not your culture. It did not define your culture. And I do not partake of American culture because I'm conversant with it because I've been here for about 56 years now. But I'm still Haitian at heart. And most of my dreams are still occurring in Haiti, literally in Haiti. So I dream of it constantly.
Okay. So you are Haitian, you would say, you know, that's the group or community you're a part of?
Yes, that is my primary community. But I'm also part of the African world. And in my trips that I took to Africa when I was a little bit younger, of course, I've not been there in a couple of decades now, I felt totally at home. And I recognized myself in the streets, in Benin especially, Old Dahomey, in Senegal, in other places. I felt completely at home. And to the point where, for instance, when people saw me dance in West Africa, I've not been elsewhere in Africa, West Africa, and when they saw me go into a religious trance, for instance, people started giving the name of the albino African because of my color.
Okay.
And yeah, and they said, well, you are home, brother. And that's what people would tell me in the street, you are home, welcome home.
Okay. So talk to us about that that experience. You said that when you would go into a religious trance. What does that mean? Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Well, it means very simply that given the occasion, given the proper context, some of us go into a trance because a spirit has decided to inhabit your body. And this is, of course, a marvelous experience of which you don't remember because your soul, it seems, has left your body. And so people recognize it instantly. And so that this was a wonderful experience, let's put it this way. And I'm lucky enough to be able to go through that on occasion when it's appropriate.
Okay. So talk to us now about your involvement in your current faith community. That's a good segue, because I know that religious trance is a part of your faith tradition. So talk to us about your involvement. Like, how did you become introduced to it? You said that you grew up, kind of non-religious. So how did you develop your current faith that you have?
Well, as a very young child, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, I knew I was going to become a priest. This is something that I always knew about. Of course, in terms of what was presented to me in the family setup and in terms of Haiti proper, I always assumed that it was going to be the Roman Catholic Church that I would become a priest of. It turned out, of course, that I'm a priest, but it was not the intention of the spirit world for me to go into that particular church. And I'm grateful for that. So they would, at some point, they do remind you what it is that you were born to be. But I always knew that I was going to become a priest. Now, where I live presently in the Midwest, where I live specifically, there are very few Haitians. And none of these Haitians would admit to knowing anything about Haitian Vodou, even if they know about it, or they're cognizant, or they practice itself, but it's not proper for people to identify themselves as such. There is this almost prohibition to admit what you are. And I think it's a very colonized mentality in that sense, that people are ashamed to say who they are. I've been very forceful about this and where I stand on those issues. And African Americans who are very close friends and well-intended have always told me not to speak publicly of these things because I would lose all connection to the African American community and others for that matter, because these things were seen as superstitious, not religious enough. But you see, African religions are far more than religions. There's a spiritual dimension which does exist. It goes in all areas in life. And I hesitate calling them religions because they're far more than that. It is a worldview, it is a way of thinking of the cosmos and the human being's place in that cosmos. And so it's far more than religion. It's not limited to Sunday morning or Saturday if you're Muslim or Friday night if you're Jewish. It is something that it is 24 hours a day, every day of the week.
So how would you say, like, when did you knew that you were going to be a priest? You said from when you were younger. So like at what age, or like when did you become a priest actually? And when did you start actively practicing Haitian Vodou?
Well, my first initiation, and I've undergone several initiations. The first initiation is what we call Nandomi. It occurred during the sleep stage. Not all dreams are dreams. There are dreams that are dreams and dreams that are far more than dreams. And that experience was absolutely shattering and absolutely wonderful. And then once you have that initiation Nandomi, because you're born a priest, you're not made a priest. You're born a priest. And in terms of the reincarnational process, which is very much throughout the African continent. And so once that is established, it is a good idea to do it non giclé. In other words, to do it in actual practice in front of witnesses in terms of this world in which we live. But you become a priest, obviously, much sooner than that, once you have received that anointment, Nadomi.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be said, of course, that priests have their functions and they are not necessarily the same. Some individuals, for instance, their primary occupation may be education. Other priests I know are heavily into healing and the knowledge of herbs and medicines and that kind of thing. So we all have our specialty. Mine happens to be education.
Okay. Yeah. Mine too.
All right. And there are lois for that. The lois, with their own specialties, even though every loi can do anything it chooses to do, but they still have their specialties.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for making that point. It's such an important point to be made, because I think often the perceptions that people both within and outside of the tradition have is that, there's this image, particularly like of Mambo, that you're a performer, right? That like that
Yeah.
you've got to be kind of like artistically inclined, or that you're singing and dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And we need more, exposure and more narratives and people saying, well, no, like you can be called, to do work in other areas, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I can't sing. The only place I dare sing is in the shower. And even that is not that successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here. But I have to say, when that, the religious music though, that prayer Guinea, it
Mm-hmm.
sound good to my soul when I sing it. So
I love the ritual. If I could
yeah.
attend a ceremony every single night, I would do so. Of course, it would become prohibitively expensive, and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps I would tire of it. But there's nothing like the scent of Florida water
Mm-hmm.
and whatever else goes on in that room. Yeah, and of course, the drums. I am totally enamored by ritual. I love ritual, and it is necessary for one's soul because it transports you to a different world altogether.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of, like along those lines, of the transformative power of faith and ritual, I wonder, how does your faith influence your sense of creativity and your artistic expression, and however you in however way that you are artistic and creative? How has your faith influenced that?
Well, it seems to me that there's not much of me outside of that particular belief system.
Mhm.
It impacts my life in every single ways that I can think of. And in all areas, I cannot think of a life outside of that, actually. It gives me my place not only in terms of the society, the collectivity in which I live, but also in terms of placing me in the cosmic, in the cosmos itself. And I'm reminded, for instance, that African religions are deeply humanistic.
Mm.
Yes, they are monotheistic. They've always been monotheistic, but
Right.
they're also humanistic. And there is a Zulu teaching that is absolutely uh, interesting along those lines. It says, I am the highest being in the universe. I challenge the universe to show me a higher being than myself. In other words, Homo sapiens, the human, is at the center of the universe. In other words, the human is God-like, a piece of the all block.
Mm.
And if, for instance, as in Asia, in Africa, and elsewhere, the reincarnation becomes a concept that is quite universal in those societies. If one's life, one's soul is immortal, it is not just immortal after death, but before birth itself. So we were always present, and we're present at the creation itself. We were there, every one of us.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. Powerful. Houngan Patrick, I have to give you some kind of title because that's just how I was raised. I can't just be calling you Patrick. But I hear you, but your video has frozen. So can you try, please, maybe turning it off and then on again? See if we can get the video back. Yeah,
Does it
that
work?
did it. Yeah, that did it.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, good thing we didn't lose audio, but the images got paused for a second. All right. So talk to us about like any favorite memories that you have, right, about ritual and worship in your tradition, right? Is there anything that particularly stands out to you, like that you thought was just a really, awesome occurrence, an event that you'd like to share with us?
Well, those memories are tied principally to my own family, my own extended family. I was blessed enough, for instance, to have known my great-grandmother. And my great-grandmother was born in 1858, and I knew her. She died when I was 5 years old. And it happens, according to people who are older than me in my family, that I might have been her favorite great-grandchild. And it's really interesting because if you were born in 1858 and if you were born in the US, you would have been a slave at that point, right? But this was Haiti, of course, and we had abolished slavery on our own without the help of the European powers, obviously. And so I have some memories of my great-grandmother. And I remember, for instance, a funeral quite well. And apparently she and I had a grandiose relationship when I was a child, when I was a toddler, and until her death. And so those are precious memories, and she is still taking care of me.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to, you've been so generous with your time today. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we close?
Well, you see, the first rituals that I attended, the first ceremonies that I attended, and it was one in Bellegarde, for instance, a very long time ago, I felt completely at home. I had found my home at long last. And it just felt good to be surrounded by these folks in the neighborhood of Bellegarde in Port-au-Prince, one of the poor neighborhoods in Port-au-Prince. And it was just absolutely wonderful. It brought me to tears. And every ceremony I attend since then brings me to tears. So I'm always grateful that I have that to fall back on. And so Milwaukee has none of that, obviously. But I'm still able to travel from place to place. And we do have Humfor temples, Haitian temples in all the great cities of the US. So I have developed friendships that allows me to attend those ceremonies.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so very much, Houngan Patrick. Thank you for what you shared. I know it's going to be a blessing to everybody who's watching and listening to learn more about the beautiful, beautiful, rich tradition of Haitian voodoo, and to get this glimpse of of a voodoo practitioner who's also a scholar. So we thank you.
Well, I'm grateful that you contacted me for this. And let us remember that the Haitian people is a very powerful people. It has an august presence in the world. Our language is beautiful. Our religion is beautiful. We are beautiful. And sometimes we forget that. And we need to be reminded on a regular basis that what we do is just absolutely great.
Yes. Aye, Bobo.
Aye, Bobo. Thank you.
Thank you.